And a good afternoon, everyone. Welcome into Issues and Attitudes. My name is Jeff Owens, General Manager at WEIU. Today we're going to be talking all about the Mattoon Public Library. In studio, the Director of the Mattoon Public Library, Carl Walworth. Welcome back, Carl.
Good to be with you, Jeff.
And also back, Chris Suerdieck from the Mattoon History Center at the library. He's the curator. Welcome, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for having me back.
Well, we appreciate you all coming in and giving us an update of where we stand right now at the Mattoon Library with since you've been on about a year or so ago. So why don't you start, Carl, about what's new and what's happening right now over there?
Well, one thing people might be interested in, our numbers are up. I think we were up 13% in February as far as checkouts and 20% in March. Digital is part of that, but not all of it. So I think that, and we had a digital program called Canopy, which has movies and that kind of thing. And so that's brand new, and people might want to check that out. And of course, with the library card, what we do is free. So you're all prepaid. All you need your library card. We continue to do a lot of community programming. Our DIY series, we do every couple of months. We'll have a program where people come in and like they made homemade cards one month. The most recent one was on quilting, and there's a fairly active group of quilters in Mattoon. They did that. And so DIY is one of our kind of regular things. Chris has a nice discussion group, or a really good discussion group that he's had for a few years. One of our other staff members is adding a second book discussion group this month, and they're going to talk about the book Verity. Luann Schultz, if people know Luann, is going to lead that. What other programs have we? Our literacy program does well. One other cool thing, and certainly within the last year, is a local author has been helping or leading a young writers group. It's got mostly high school students, but one junior high student, and they come in every week, and she coaches them on their writing and their creative work. And at one time, I think we still might be headed toward maybe publishing an anthology of some of the work of the students, but it's basically a group of 6-8 students that come in every Thursday afternoon, and then up on the second floor, our story times, like on Fridays, we typically have 25 or 30 kids. We have a new fruit stand up there, and the kids like to play with that. And so those are some of the highlights. But we regularly have. We had a coffee house discussion during Black History Month. That was well attended. And I'm trying to think what's coming up. I'll think of some things as we go along.
No, that's fine. That's good. Well, Chris, also the one thing I think the library has done that's amazing that you're getting all kinds of credit for is this history center that went from a few displays to now it's really just taken off with so many different storyboards and things down there. So talk about maybe folks who don't know what the history center is, and then kind of what's the latest additions you've made to it, if you could.
Sure. Well, and to your point, I think people still don't understand how complete the History Center is. We now have 6 rooms in the basement of the library, which is literally the whole basement except for one staff room. And we, through storyboards and displays and artifacts, we tell really the history of Mattoon and the history of businesses, industries, events, institutions. And every time people come down, kind of the first comment I get is we had no idea this was here. And the second comment is we had no idea you had this much stuff. And so that's still the challenge, is getting the word out. I mean, you know, I've been on here before. I've been on our friends at WMCI. I've been on the local TV stations. We've done all the social media stuff, and so that's still the biggest challenge is getting the word out. The biggest single project that we've done since I was here last is we opened our Civil War Center, and I think a lot of people will be amazed to find out Mattoon's involvement in the Civil War. Of course, there were no battles fought in Illinois, but because of Camp Grant, which most people know about, and U.S. Grant being in Mattoon, 5 regiments of Illinois infantry were raised in Mattoon, and because of the the positioning of Mattoon with the two major railroads crossing here. Mattoon was a major Union Army center for troops, for horses. There was a major Army corral here for raising and training horses for the cavalry and for the wagon trains. Prisoner of war trains came through Mattoon all the time. I mean, there's just a tremendous amount of history about that Mattoon was involved during the Civil War, and that's the one thing that has been our biggest focus.
Did you? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Were you aware of that before you started, or did you know how big it was?
Absolutely not. Really, I thought, okay, this, and most people probably know we got a grant to start this. Is why we decided to do a Civil War center. We got a grant that specified doing a Civil War study center. And my first thought was, okay, how am I going to fill this room up? And as soon as I started doing the research and uncovering the tremendous amount of activities that took place around Mattoon, in fact, Mattoon and the immediate area contributed over 1,200 soldiers to the different Illinois regiments, and we have one wall that is a roster of all 1,200 of those men. Another thing that's been really exciting for me in the last few months is we became the beneficiary of the photo files of one of the Mattoon photographers back in the 50s and 60s, Vic Provenzano. His family, they had maintained all of his negatives over the years, and his family donated those negatives to the library. And then we've also acquired a tremendous amount of the photo negatives from Warren Moody.
Okay, yeah, I remember
So
Warren.
in the last probably month or so, I've added over 1,000 photos to our photo file through scanning those negatives, and it's fun every day looking through all those photos. So
Anything stand out that was just like kind of mind boggling?
Oh yeah, I've come across several sets of photos that had to do with the Mattoon National Guard units. We've got some photos of when the National Guard unit went off to California when they were called up for the Korean War. We've found hundreds of aerial photos that span everywhere from 1956 all the way up to 1974. So I've got those all broken down chronologically, and you can look at the aerial photos and see how the subdivisions have developed. You look at buildings that used to be there and aren't there anymore. It's just an amazing amount of information.
Let's go back to when you started this thing. Was this something that was been brewing in your head at your previous job, and you said, I want to do this? Or how did it all, where did it come from? Because, I mean, it's crazy how big this is.
Well, it is crazy, actually. And so after I retired, I'd been on the library board for over 20 years, and I've always loved the library, and I've always been interested in history. And I'd been retired about a year, and Carl and I had lunch one day, and I said, I'm not looking for a job, but I'm kind of looking for a project, something to sink my teeth into. And he says, how would you like to come down and try and make sense out of all the piles of photos and files that are in the local history room that nobody's ever been able to do anything with? And understandably, the library couldn't afford to pay staff.
Yeah.
So I'm the lowest paid employee at the library, and every year Carl and I laugh about he's going to double my salary. So, two times zero is still zero. So as I just dug into it and started finding all these files, all these photos, all these documents, we just decided we've got to display some of this stuff.
Yeah.
So it started out, when you get off the elevator, the first kind of hallway room was the first project I did. And at that time, I didn't think it'd probably go any further than that. But the thing has just grown. I would say that the end result today is not anywhere near what I thought. I didn't have a long-term view of this is what it's going to look like.
Yeah.
It's just gone one room after the next, and I've focused on one category at a time as we move through. And then, of course, the Civil War thing has really been the culmination of it. So, yeah, it's just I had no idea that it would develop into what it has.
What about you, Carl? When you had that idea, you said to do something like this, do you think it would create a Mattoon History Center in the library?
It really wasn't. Actually, he's being nice to me. The room that he started working in was really a wreck, and the floors didn't look good, and there was nothing anywhere close to organized. It was just a bunch of stuff, piles and boxes, and there was nothing there. I mean, there were a few documents, and we had city directories, and so I shouldn't say nothing. There were some things there, but trying to find something or make sense out of it would have been very difficult. And but Chris is one of the most organized people I've ever been around, and he's got a place for everything. And he just started one thing at a time, and pretty soon there were. The boxes were off the floor, and pretty soon there were files on individuals, and of course we had no idea it would turn into what it has. But Chris has been the driver. We have had a lot of help from the community. I mean, one story that I've told many times, the floors were kind of, somebody was down there and said, "Boy, you're doing a great job, but what are you going to do about these floors?" And Chris was like, "We'll get your checkbook out," and the person did. And so one thing from another, people have supported it. We got this nice gift and a will to start the Civil War Center, and we had some other things that we wanted to buy, which is another good story of acquiring some of these things at this auction. And some people wrote some big checks. People donate things all the time, and some of them become part of the display. And so it really is a community. There's been a lot of people who've had their toe in the water or have participated. Yeah. And that's really a great thing for us to have people come. And, we want people to come and use the entire library. There are certainly people who this is the part of the library where is going to be their focus or where they're going to go. We've had people come in from out of town. He's done class reunions, family reunions. People come in from out of, and part of what they'll do on their weekend is spend a Saturday at the library, or at least part of a Saturday. Sometimes a good part of a Saturday.
Where does it go from here if you're almost out of room? Is it not going to grow anymore? Is it culminated, or are there thoughts?
Well, it's not culminated. I mean, I've got a lot of thoughts. I don't have much floor space. I don't have any floor space to speak of. I've still got a little wall space. And Carl and I both agree, though, because we've actually had some good intentioned people in the community have even offered us some alternate locations. But we both agree that we reinforce each other. The patrons to the library come to the History Center, and the patrons to the History Center come to the library, and it's a mutual. And in my mind, the home for the History Center will always be in the library. One of the things that we've thought about, we're not quite near that, but we may do some multimedia things, like maybe put up a flat screen with, so you can go up, and if you want to see the barbershops, you select the menu, and then all the information on the barbershops comes up. I mean, it's amazing how many people come down and they're focused. It sounds, kind of odd, but people will come down. Harold Shores came down one day, and he says, before my store burnt down, he says, my dad had a list of about 13 jewelry stores in Mattoon. And I said, I think there was close to 70. And so I got him out the list, and
wow.
he was dumbfounded. So, and actually he took that list back over to his jewelry store. One of the things that we're exploring with one of our supporters, that I won't name him, but people could probably guess who it is. We're talking about at some point being able to put up a hit in the windows of some of the storefronts on Mattoon, put up a history of the buildings as like one of those what do you call them? Those
QR codes.
Okay,
QR
yeah.
codes.
Yeah.
So you could, so if you're standing in front of the old of Jack and Bill's, you could look at the QR code and find out all the things that were in that building over the years. It's a project that the history part of it's done. It's just the coordination and getting it done. But I think that's a project that would be a lot of fun to do.
The one thing I looked at when I was looking at your the website this morning, I didn't realize there was that many theaters in Mattoon over the years. I mean, I thought, okay, what don't I know? And then I'm like, well, it's enormous. I mean, Can you talk a little bit about that? I'm putting you on the spot.
Oh no, sure. Well, in fact, it's kind of interesting because on the board we've got about the theaters and the information I've got. I say that Mattoon had there were probably 3 generations of theaters, because going all the way back to before the turn of the century, we had, of course, the Dole Opera House, and we had the Majestic Opera House, and those and several others like that brought in live performances. And the Majestic and the Dole were both famous for bringing in the railroad troops. They would come in they'd have a railroad car with all their sets and their costumes, and they would set up. And so that evolved then into several theaters, many theaters that combined vaudeville and in the early silent films. And in about the 20s, then some actual movie house theaters came in. And at any given time, there were as many as 3 or 4 film movie houses up and down Broadway and on Western. People of our generation tend to think of the Mattoon and the Time, and those were the survivors, and they go back a long way. In fact, the Time Theater was originally built as a theater called the Grand, and it was built, I think, about 1920, and it had a fire in it. And after the fire, it was closed, and then the Fresina Corporation bought it and changed it over to the Time and reopened it, I think, about 1932. So, and of course, the building's still there. It's no longer a movie house, but so yeah, there's a tremendous history about the theaters.
Yeah, that was interesting. And Carl, for the library, something called the Libby.
Well, Libby. So we have 4 digital platforms.
Okay.
Libby is one of them, and you can check out audiobooks or ebooks on Libby. And you can also check out audiobooks or Hoopla, or audiobooks or ebooks on the cloud. And then Hoopla, you can also do movies, TV shows, that kind of thing. And then we have this kind of the new one, Canopy, which is a kind of a different kind of more a different kind of set of movies. But Libby is a digital platform, and you can literally take the Mattoon Public Library with you. You can be in Florida or California or wherever and download a book, and all you need is your library card and download a book, and you can be on your way. And if you're not traveling, Jeff, you put on, you can stream it or come through your whatever you're going to do in your car.
This is amazing how much things have changed over the years. What do you think the toughest part of both your jobs is at the Mattoon Public Library / History Center? Because we're talking all good news. Is there anything that's tough?
Well, tough.
Or tough or hard, or?
I mean, we're very fortunate. Have a really good staff, and that makes life for me very easy. I have a great board, and I guess this is both a tough and also a big strength. We're in probably the most architecturally significant building in Mattoon. It would either be number 1 or number 2. Probably would say it's number 1. It's a Carnegie Library. Chris was involved when they expanded it in 1994. And so it's a great place to go to work every day. It's beautiful. It's got all the original woodwork. And so that's the good side. The downside is taking care of a building from 1903 can be tough because it can sometimes you get pretty good size bills for one thing or another, and kind of keeping it up to date and making it look like you want it to look. I mean, we want it to look good. We want people to want to come in and to feel at home there. And so I would say keeping that going can be tough.
Anything you'd add, Chris, to that?
Well, I would say probably not tough, but I would say more of the challenge is what I mentioned before. I would love to have people down there all day, every day, looking at the exhibits, being able to answer questions for them, being able to point them to things that they're interested in. So to me, the biggest challenge, and I guess you'd say the hardest thing, is just being able to get people in.
Okay.
So the other thing I'd like to mention, if we got just another minute.
We got about 9 more minutes.
Okay. Yeah. Well, then I can slow down. The last 2 years, one of the things that's been really successful is we've done in June what we call Ride Through History. And I have conducted a bicycle ride through parts of Mattoon, and we stop at various spots along the way that are of historical interest. And thankfully, a lot of them, the building has been there. Very, very rarely is it the original use, but sometimes the building is not there, but the location is, and so we'll stop and we'll talk. We talk about the broomcorn industry. We talked about the Sally Ann bread factory. We talked about both railroad roundhouses. The first year when we did this, we didn't have much social media, and we decided we were going to be excited if we had 2 other people besides me and myself and my friend that helped me get it started, Jerry Zalatoff, who's an avid bicyclist. We had 38 people show up that
Holy
day.
cow.
And so last year, on June, I think 24th, we did Riding Through History 2.0, and we had about the similar number of people. And the fun part is it's some different people. We ride, I map it out ahead of time. Some people know, they see me all over town on my bike. I'm an avid bicyclist. We mapped it out to where it's about 5 miles, and it's about an hour and a half ride. So it's a very easy ride with a lot of stops. So I'm getting ready this week to do the save the date for Ride Through History 3.0, and it'll be June 24th, which is a Saturday. And one of the things that I think some people will be interested in, we're going to highlight some of the Sears kit homes that are still standing in Mattoon. And some of you may know about kit homes back in the 20s, 30s, 40s. You could actually order a complete home from the Sears catalog, and
Those old time ads are so great.
and they'd ship it in on a railroad car, and every piece of lumber was numbered, and you could put your own home together. And there are some still very well kept examples in that.
Can you give us maybe one? I don't know if you can give the actual address.
Let me just, I'm toying around. I'm going to contact the owners first and make sure it's okay with them that we stop in front of their house.
That'd be kind of
But I can tell you there's 3 or 4 on Wabash Avenue between Logan and 6th Street.
Okay.
And that'll be a primary part of our loop that we ride.
We're talking to Carl Walworth and Chris Suerdieck from the Mattoon Library today. Anything else? I mean, we have some time that you want that we haven't discussed, or things that are going on. I know it's spring break week this week in Mattoon, so you have some things for high school and junior high kids to do this week over there.
Well, we always have things for them to do. Some of them are out of town, but we had a story time this morning, and I expect our second floor to be more active, at least in the afternoon. During the school year, the second floor is not as active in the afternoon as it is during the summer. I mean, during the summer, you can come up there almost any time and see moms, dads, grandmas, grandpas, and kiddos. Yeah, it would be more active this week for sure.
Chris, when you think about the History Center, and I know that there's not a lot of room left, but I mean, you said you have some ideas. Could you tease us with a couple of, you're not locking in, but maybe just some thoughts of the next steps of these storyboards. When I opened that website today, I'm like, how many is there? I mean,
there's probably close to 200.
I was gonna say it had to be a couple hundred. I was thinking.
Yeah. Well, there's still a lot of categories of businesses that I've got information on and lists on that we haven't been able to profile like I've done on some of the other storyboards. Yeah. So that's probably going to be my next project, is figuring out how to be able to get those, like I said, and probably revert to some kind of a social media way to do that. And the other thing that I would throw out is, Carl mentioned I've got one Mattoon High School class already scheduled for a tour this year for their reunion. So if anybody out there is listening, that you're on a reunion committee and you're looking for something to do on a Saturday morning or a Saturday afternoon in between events, we'd love to have you. The reunion groups largely really enjoy it when they come down.
I would think that would almost become a thing that they would do almost automatically now, just to go back and see some of the stuff from there. Mostly as the 50 and 40 and the older classes come through.
Yeah, and one of the other things that we just did last week, and this was with Carl's agreement, we've got a phenomenal collection of Mattoon High School yearbooks all the way back to 1904. And because of donations or because the library had them, we've got multiple years where we have as many as 4, 5, 6, 7 copies. And I have gotten a lot of requests over the years of people say, do you have an extra yearbook for, 19 whatever? So we went through, my goal is to keep at least 2 of every year so that we have a backup.
Yeah.
But we listed them on Facebook last week, and we've already sold 24 yearbooks. And we're selling them for a donation of $25. So if anybody out there is listening, contact us. We've got a list of the yearbooks that we have available. It's amazing when people contact me and say, hey, you know, we had a fire, my yearbooks got destroyed, we've moved across the country 3 times, I lost my yearbooks. I've got the total, we've got 100 yearbooks available over about 40 different years. So
Are you missing any years? Or-
the years we're missing are between 1917 and 1920, and between 1905 and 1917. And
Okay.
after that, we have every year.
So, the early stuff.
The early stuff, yeah.
That, which is still really amazing when you think about it. I mean, but I can't imagine somebody throwing them away. I think fire damage, water damage, or
Right.
you forget where it is kind of thing. A few minutes left today. Podcast. You're still doing your podcast, Carl?
I am not currently doing
Okay.
the podcast. I did them for a while. Maybe bring them back, but right now we're doing a newsletter, quarterly newsletter, and if somebody wants to be on the list for that, send me an email, carl@mattoonlibrary.org, and that's been a nice way for us to kind of get the word out, and that's kind of the latest thing.
Is there certain times that people can see the History Center? I know on your website there's a couple things, or
Yeah.
by appointment or whatever.
Well, I'm there during the week, 9 to 3. Sometimes Carl lets me leave for lunch. Sometimes not.
Depends how important the donor is, right? I mean-
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And you know, being that it is all volunteer, I do like to have Saturdays off. But
Yeah.
if there's a group or a family, I'm always happy to come in and open up and do a special tour on a Saturday. But just contact me. You can contact me through the main number at the library, or the local history's email is localhistory@mattoonlibrary.org.
There you go. I just had a brain. Oh, I know. When things take off like this, I've noticed that sometimes there's a carryover effect. Have other libraries contacted you and said, "Hey, how did you get this started?" And we're interested in something like this?
Well, not so much other libraries right now, but happily I'm working with a group of friends in Neoga who want to start a Neoga library, and there's 3 or 4 of them that have come up and of course gone through our library, and I've put them in touch with a few people to help them. They don't have a spot yet. And then I also, and I wouldn't take credit for this at all, but we mentioned earlier, Moultrie County Historical Society had the grand opening of their history museum Saturday, and I'm actually a member of their society, and their entire board came over and saw our history center and modeled some of their storyboards off of the way we've done them. And so I've kind of collaborated with them a little bit, and they're a great group, and it's actually been a really good collaboration back and forth, because they've shared some of their ideas with us also. So,
That's cool.
yeah.
And Carl, last question. I'm doing putting you on the spot. Is there a most valuable book at the Mattoon Public Library? I ask a lot of people when they come in from libraries this. Do you know?
We really don't have a most valuable book that I can think of. We don't really have a lot of the
Older books. Okay.
the unique or books like that. Now, when we had the History Center, JW did come up with some books that were.
So for the history
Unfortunately,
center,
we're out of time.
Oh!
I'm sorry. You guys, we'll have you back, all right?
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Carl. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah.
Great seeing you guys. We are WEIU.